Hey, Ghost Machine fans, this one's for you. Welcome to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast, episode 21. I am Nick, and as usual, I am joined by my better half, Snoggle. How do you fare this evening, my dear?
Well, I've had a pretty long week, and it's only Monday. My day started by going to the BMV.
Well, then I imagine, hopefully, reading this book was somewhat of a relief, let's just say for now, before we talk about the spoiler part.
Well, as you know, I read this book when it came out. So I actually have been very, very excited to talk about this all day. It's going to be a good one.
You make a really good point because this episode is going to air on Wednesday, August 21st, which is 1 week after Geiger number 5 came out. And Geiger number 5 is what we are doing a deep dive into this episode.
I know. On our 21st episode, the podcast can legally drink beer now.
Mm-hmm.
In the United States. For our listeners not from this country, the podcast could have drank beer about 4 episodes ago.
Yeah, that's
3?
true. I think it depends. We've got people all over. I'd be curious. I think it's perhaps the same in New Zealand as it is in the UK, but maybe not some of the other places that listen. Now, we do have a shout out this time.
Shout out?
We do.
What?
We do have a shout out, as usual. Thank you, Snoggle. This week's shout out goes to Legion of Comics on YouTube. They're also Legion of Comics 17 on Instagram. They do a ton of stuff on YouTube. Gentleman's name is Mark. I would highly recommend checking out his show and his content. But the reason that we're shouting out Legion of Comics this episode is because they were kind enough to send us a copy of the San Diego Comic-Con Hyde Street exclusive ash can.
Ooh, yeah. Spooky.
Very spooky, and very generous. That was super kind of them. And you may or may not know it, but Legion of Comics, if you check them out, they really do a great job of supporting another organization called Comics Curing Cancer. And Comics Curing Cancer, I imagine you can gather what that charity is about. So go ahead and check them out. Also, they have their annual event. They have an annual event every year, and that's coming up pretty soon for Comics Curing Cancer. So please check them out. Both of those organizations, they were super nice. They sent us that comic book, and I'm not sure if you've seen it, but we recently posted a Speculator Sunday video with that comic book because we wanted to highlight what they did. But we also put some pretty neat, creepy special effects in there for you. And just hope that you get a chance to check that video out. We had a lot of fun filming it. Even Snoggle manned the camera for 1 or 2 of the shots.
Mm-hmm.
She was very, very impatient with me. It didn't last long.
I braved it on Hyde Street.
Yeah, literally. That's if you watch the video where the part that Nick and Bruce are both in the frame, that's because there's somebody else holding the camera on Hyde Street. So yeah, check it out on our Instagram. Well, thanks very much to Mark at Legion of Comics. We're going to talk a little bit more about him when we get to the listener mail section as well.
Yes. I'm excited about this one.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about the news?
Of course I want to talk about the news. An addition to the Ghost Machine team was made this week. And it's super exciting to just see a team that we all know and love continue to grow. And Danielle Ward actually joined the team in retailer relations. So I believe she came from Alien Valiant.
Yeah, so this is pretty cool. It's really great because it's indicative of the brand growing and the brand having long-term foresight. Because Danny's position is she's the manager of retailer relations. So she's their first person, I believe, spearheading like a specific retailer relations department for Ghost Machine. And that means obviously they want to continue to grow with retailers across the country. They want to build relationships with them. Obviously, brick and mortar retailers are the cornerstone of this industry perpetuating. And I had a few minutes to speak with Danny this morning, actually, And it's really neat because she comes to this as a fan just like us. Like we both talked briefly about how Jeff Johns made us both like Green Lantern. If it wasn't for him, we probably wouldn't like Green Lantern. And it was neat to hear about how someone who's as enthused about the properties as we are now gets to work and represent those things in a retailer-facing sense. So I've gotten a great first impression from her, but while you also mentioned it, she does come from Valiant, which is currently published by Alien Books, and has done a lot of neat stuff there over the years. So I've often mentioned Valiant and how it's similar to The Unnamed in some ways because it's a shared universe deal. And I just think it's pretty neat that Ghost Machine, like you said, is continuing to grow. So congrats to Danielle Ward out there.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yay!
All right. Oh, we do have one more piece of news. Thank you, listeners who emailed in with a suggestion about what we need to do for the spoiler pod. So we did get a suggestion from our Twitter captain, Cameron Gill, out in the UK. And he said that we should do a themed sound based on which series we're doing the deep dive in. So, like, this is a Geiger book, so we would play something like, or even or occasionally. But, there could be some kind of a rotation there. But it's all going to have something to do with stuff like that, You were pretty excited about that idea when I told you what Cameron had to say.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll find it. Like whenever something that's just horribly offensive gets said, and we need to bleep it out, which hasn't happened yet, but now we'll have it happen. Then we can use your air horn for that.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
We can make it a forever sound.
A forever sound?
Yeah, we'll just all make the noise over and over and over again, and then you'll just have it. It can be an actual sound effect.
Like
the Snoggle horn.
Sounds like the way that we're going to accidentally summon a demon or something.
One can hope. So spoiler alert.
What?
No,
what?
Spoiler alert. You got to put the noise in there.
Oh.
Spoiler alert. All right. If you have not read Geiger number 5, you got to pause. Don't worry. We're going to wait for you. And then you can just come on back after you've read it, drove to your local comic book shop and pick it up, read it, and then dive in with us.
Mm-hmm. We will wait here for you.
Mm-hmm.
Take your time, do what you need to do, but come on back once you have read it. Especially this one. Like I can't tell you enough. If you're a person out there that listens to these because we kind of give a synopsis and that maybe is more fun for you than actually reading the comic, you have to read it.
Yeah. I will say that I am most certain my dad has listened to our podcast and not read the comics.
Oh, sure. We should just give him them all.
We will.
Yeah, we should give him them all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. You're back. You're ready to talk about the world-class creator team on this book. So, Snoggle, who's our creator roll call on this?
We've got creators, Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, our colorist, Brad Anderson, and our king of letters, Rob Lee.
And as our Canadian loyalist associate Michael Schwartz formerly pointed out, the cover of this book has what logo underneath all 4 of their names?
The Unnamed.
That's right. And that is because it takes place in the same world as other characters that we know and love, such as Simon Pure, a.k.a. Redcoat, and Junkyard Joe and the Northerner, right? But not Rook Exodus, for everybody who's been following along trying to figure it out. Remember our Joey D question?
There
you go. Well, there are 2 covers in this case. One of the covers is the A cover, which is going to take us down a brief discussion about what led up to this comic book. So let's do it out of order this time. Let's talk about that. The B cover is by Gabriel Rodriguez, and Brad Anderson did do the colors. But it's pretty sweet looking. You've got Tariq coming out of the something.
It's really sweet.
I like Barney.
I mean, Barney looks the most angry I've seen that dog look. But he definitely doesn't look dead.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't look dead. I guess that's a good point. If you see this B cover, you do know that he's at least not dead going into the book, right? So very cool cover. I really dig this Gabriel Rodriguez art. But why is it so significant that we have to talk about what led up to this comic? Up until this point, if you've only been reading the comic, but you haven't been looking at all the solicits that have come out and the stuff like that online, you know that Barney has been dognapped by the electrician, and Nate and Tariq went to go get him, and they got, like, accosted and presumably knocked out. That's all you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's backtrack a little bit. If you have paid attention to the solicits, which many people have, probably most of the people that end up listening to this show have, and you've seen this A cover, it is a cover of Tariq holding Barney in his arms, and both of Barney's mouths have blood coming out of them. Somebody on the Facebook joked, that was he'd been eating strawberries or something. It was pretty funny.
Red beans.
We're going to be here all night. Tip your waiter. But obviously, you see that, and the way that some of the solicits were worded, it made it seem like Barney might die.
I mean, obviously, as a Barney fan, I was like, I don't even want to speculate because it just made me upset thinking Barney might die. So I'm like, this book needs to come out. I need to know what happened. So genuinely, I've just been waiting. But I've learned something as a newer comic book reader. The covers don't always kind of indicate 100% what's going to happen.
They don't necessarily always indicate what's going to happen in that issue.
Yeah.
In this era of comics, especially, because there's a million variant covers nowadays. But even the regular ones that do tend to tie back to the main plot line aren't always necessarily referring to something that happened in that particular moment. In this case, it was even mentioned in the solicits that someone would meet their final fate or something like that. So it was even said, like, somebody's going to die, right?
They're just messing with our emotions, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with, Jeff, Gary. I'm good with it because I think the anticipation of this book coming out, like, that's something I enjoy. It's part of turning to the next chapter if you're reading a novel. You want to know what is going to happen next. So I appreciate that. A little bit of teasers, like, ooh, what's going to happen? I mean, the community was scared for Barney for a month.
The community was. There were, like, wars over what was a spoiler, what wasn't a spoiler, and all this stuff because of how successfully they misdirected you. Now, I do want to put it out there that when I saw this cover, my immediate reaction was, there's no way Barney dies. Because if I'm going to kill off someone as significant as Barney, I'm not going to just say, oh, by the way, Barney's going to die. You know, so as soon as they were kind of putting it out there that way, my assumption was that was not who it was. Because they were obviously being cryptic to some extent. But because of the pacing in this comic, and we're going to talk about it, I was really not sure. I was like, man, maybe he really is going to kill him. And maybe they're going to do it in such a way where you're like, man, I never thought that's what was going to happen, even though, yeah, that's what was on the cover. You know, so my point is that it was so well put together that even though objectively I was like, they wouldn't advertise it that way if they were really going to kill the dog, I still wasn't for sure if they weren't going to kill the dog.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And much to your point about turning the page to the next chapter in the tale, let us begin.
This first page, again, just epic storytelling with 0 words. Like, we pick up right where we left off, and Geiger is, like, hurt. He's bleeding, right? And Nate's down for the count. And the situation, just like from all the facial expressions, just looks extremely dire. And I will say this is the sickest he's looked in all 5 books.
It's the closest that he has looked to the way that he looked at the barbecue.
100%. That bottom right panel.
The very first page?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like he is about to die.
That's true. He's still muscular, but he doesn't look nearly as thick, and he looks like he's starting to look a tad gaunt. So that could have to do with the lack of radioactivity. He did just get hit with a bunch of boron, if you recall, at the end of the previous episode, because the electrician showed that he knew enough about him to know that boron would affect him in that way.
I think it's crazy because, like, something to think about is since the first initial bomb went off or whatever it was, has he even bled?
Point being, right now, he's bleeding quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, that's a good point. I don't recall. I know we've seen him get knocked out, remember? But that was because somebody like got the drop on him in the moment. In this case, it's because of that boron dampening his radioactive powers. And, like Gary illuminated us to, they're not as close to Molotov's dirty bomb fallout, like Ground Zero. So his powers don't replenish as quickly. Mm-hmm. But from a pacing standpoint, like you said, heck, it's very possible that on 2 pages of Red Coat, there are more words than in this whole issue.
Correct.
But there's a ton that is said here. Like, as Tariq does wake up and he starts to feel pain, he does look up at the APC type truck thing that has the cage in it. You can see the cage. And he says, Barney. And then we get to see, this is like a hey reader. Mm-hmm. This is for you, hey reader. Look at this. It's Barney and his 2 heads are on their side. You can't see his eyes, that's blackened out. So you don't know, is he alive? Is he dead? We don't know. We're there with Tariq in this moment. We want to know. We're like, oh my gosh, Jeff, just come on. Just tell us, did you kill a dog or not?
And he's like dragging himself across the floor. Like, and just can barely even speak. He gets almost to the truck and he's reaching up towards Barney. And this jerk, of course, grabs his hand. Who is it?
It's the electrician.
Mm-hmm. And I really love the first, like, big sound effect we got.
And that is his hand grabbing on, like, powering up to zap him, right?
Yeah, it's like the oldest trick in the book, like, you know, the buzzer in the hand. Mm-hmm. And people who did that, like, were the worst people. That is not a funny joke. Whoopee cushion, hysterical. Everyone thinks farts are funny. But you go to shake someone's hand and it's like, here's genuine motion. And it's like, mm.
Yeah, I forgot that was an actual thing. I was thinking just like the Joker doing it to people, but yeah, that was an actual thing. Those are a thing that you carried around, and only jerks use them. Yeah,
only jerks.
So let's talk about another reason we know he's a jerk, which only Gary Frank can accomplish. You've got a panel that is his gloved, like power glove looking, starting to get electrified hand with that sound effect on it. And then you've got the panel next to him, which is just a zoomed in profile of his nose and his teeth. And even the way that Gary drew the teeth and the gum line, it looks as though that would belong to an evil person. And shout out to Rob too. What's neat is those 2 panels are like 2 different perspectives, but he takes the sound effect and he makes it go across them both anyway, which is a really, really cool way to translate to the stunning next page, which is a full page spread of the electrician completely electrifying this guy.
And just the smug look on his face. It does make me feel better that Gary definitely, and I guess it is a post-apocalyptic type situation, but this evil electrician definitely has gingivitis.
Absolutely. Good people have gingivitis too, but in this case, you know.
Yeah. And then, like, he zaps him. In the moment, we get to see that Geiger is being electrocuted. And he's hit so hard, he is almost taken back to the memory of, like, when he first had Barney. And it is the most adorable thing I've ever seen. I love baby Barney.
You're talking about when the 2-headed puppy is licking his face?
Yes, and look at him smiling. When have we seen him smile?
That's true. He's actually smiling in that. I'm sure there's a panel of him maybe smiling before the war.
Maybe.
Only when he's with his family. But I think you're absolutely right. I think that may quite possibly be the first time that we've seen him smile since he got his powers. I don't think he smiles with Nate at all.
Once.
I don't think he may smile in Ground Zero with Molotov at one point. I think that they maybe smile when there's like the start of their friendship, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But let's talk about these 2 pages. We're talking about the full splash page where the electrician gets him. And then the next page, also no dialogue in any of the panels. And there's the one panel of baby Barney licking Tariq's face. And the color scheme on that is very different than all the others. So it's really cool because you get the sense of the contrast there, similar to how, like, if a camera was flashing to a flashback scene, like there would be a musical accompaniment and the light would be different. This is the same thing, but it's like we get to see that Gary's like, look at this moment. He is smiling. I haven't drawn this guy doing this.
Very significant.
You know? This is what I want to say about the caliber of comics that we're talking about. We have 2 full pages with no words. And they tell us an enormous story. Like, this is art. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I think back to when I was a kid and Image just got on the scene. I remember Rob Liefeld got put on Good Morning America. And they kept in the interview, they kept saying, so you're a cartoonist. You're a famous cartoonist. You're a cartoonist. And he's just like, yeah. And I see this so many years later, decades later. This is art. Like, when I go to the Art Institute of Chicago, this surpasses a lot of the things that I see there. I'm serious. This is on another level. It's awesome.
No, I completely agree with you. And then we turn the page and again, action. What I think is really cool is like very dramatic scene that we just came from. Like, first of all, he's vulnerable. He's been shot. He's bleeding for pretty badly, by the way. He's bleeding for the first time in who knows how long. And he still tries to pick up his boron stick to fight this dude. And obviously, we get him trying to fight back, and it's almost the electrician is like, he likes the torture. He is bad. And you're nothing really, are you? He's playing with him. He's toying with him. And it just makes him the worst. I will say, kudos to Rob. That is beautiful. Those letters. Love it.
Yeah, so we're talking about how Tariq still has enough to get up and try to smack the electrician, but it's not nearly enough. He literally knocks him out with a punch at that point. And then puts him in a
dumpster.
Well, he actually puts him in what looks like a large cooler or freezer.
Uh-huh.
That if you look to the left side of the panel, there are all
filled with boron.
There are all these really like tubs that say boron on them. And this thing is filled with boron. So there is no way he is tapping into his powers now. The only thing that Tariq Geiger is able to tap in right now is into his own personal grit. And that's what's cool about what happens. You know, we do get to have a really cool comic book villainy deal where the villain does get Tariq in this thing full of boron and he's incapacitated. So we get comic book villain exhibition. He starts to, talk a little bit because he's incapacitated. The hero fully, it looks like.
I'm surprised this weakness of yours hasn't been exploited before, which is like such a pompous thing for this guy to say. We already don't like him. He's already attacked 2 of our favorite people. And honestly, Nate's grown on me. So I'm mad that he's attacked all 3 of them. But he's like, look at me and what I did that you and no one else thought of. Like, everyone's an idiot. Everyone's beneath him. But he truly is just somebody who's in it for the money. Like, he likes the torture, but he's only going for Tariq because someone's paying him to do it.
Right.
He's like a hitman who's a psychopath. It's a perfect job for him.
Yeah, I think he's a bounty hunter, and at the same time, he definitely has some degree of passion about wanting to be the one that does this, wanting to be the one that gets the glowing man. And you're right that his priority is the mission, the job, not necessarily his evil whatever, because he does mention that he's been wondering what exactly changed him into the glowing man. But it doesn't seem like it's going to make or break to whether or not he's going to go get his bounty money. The next couple of pages, they do make you love Nate a little bit.
I loved Nate so much. Obviously, I don't know if he was trying to sneak up on him, but he gets up, right? And he's just been electrocuted with, like, metal all over his body. So I think that takes some grit as well.
Mm-hmm, he was smoking.
And, yeah, the electrician. Oh, yes, good plan. This made me love Nate. And he's kind of stuttering, just to still have an opportunity to free our dog.
Mm-hmm, that was cool.
I thought that is so endearing. He's literally willing to be electrocuted again, and he's just showing a lot of bravery. I'm genuinely really liking Nate. When 2 to 3 books ago, I'm like, little kid, annoying, but that just shows the great character development that this team of creators is bringing for all of us.
And the unexpected, right? Because the electrician is rather arrogant about the fact that he's like a stuttering oaf. And then he swipes 2 times and the second one gets him. And gets him good. Like, gets him under the armpit type of deal where there's obviously no armor.
That had to hurt. Well, he's...
And it's just so foolish, because it's like, well, that's a pretty bad wound in like a middle of the nowhere, whatever, genius. Like, how did you let this supposedly slow, stuttering oaf get ya?
I love the look on the electrician's face after he gets got. That and he's like, I warned you. And he just one eye close up. But then again, he's going to try to electrocute him again, and he does, and Nate's got tased.
Yeah, Nate does get tased.
Pretty bad.
Falls into the boron. Looks like, it's still endearing to see what happened. And he does mention again, like the electrician brings it back up. He's like, I've been so curious to learn what changed you into the glowing man. Probably because he wants to try to take the power or whatever in typical evil guy fashion. He gets him all the way down to where he's like having to push down on the top of the cooler thing because Tariq's got a couple of his fingers out still. And then he's able to get a grip on it. And this is what I'm saying about it being all about Tariq and not the glowing man and not about the superhero for this moment, because he's got no powers. He is doused in boron. He's coughing boron. He's inhaling boron at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But he's able to muster enough strength to throw this thing open, throw the electrician to the side, tell Nate to get up and go help Barney. And then you just kind of see this cool perspective over the left shoulder of the electrician as he's falling, of Tariq coming out of the thing at him.
And punching him so hard in his stupid little outfit that it literally cracks his mask, which I loved. I mean, the action sequence here is so great. Nate's running to the truck. The electrician grabs his arm as he's being punched, and he's gonna electrocute him. And then we just see Nate at the truck again getting Barney. It's just very jam-packed.
It's jam-packed, but because they put these little flashes of Nate running to the truck, and then he sees Barney, and then, like, he looks back, and he's seen Barney, but we haven't seen Barney. So it's building tension with comic book panels, and the pacing.
And what an excellent way to show, like, there's a lot happening all at once.
Absolutely, exactly.
And I do love, by the way, so they got me. I was like, yeah, Geiger's got him, because Geiger sees the fire alarm, and he's like, ooh, he's gonna go to zap me, and I'm gonna get the water on him, and that'll hurt him.
Here's part of the reason that got you. We're talking Ghost Machine fans about the page that starts off with Tariq seeing this fire alarm, like, in the corner, in the panel. The electrician's following him. He hits the fire alarm, and then the very bottom panel is like a wide, flat panel of just Tariq's eyes. And then there's a bubble that says, exclamation point, coming from the electrician. This is a comic book specific and only thing. Because that is meant to make you think, like Snoggle just said, the water got him. But then, because we've now been misdirected, it's that much more impactful when we see this absolutely beautiful over half-page spread of the Electrician standing in the water with the rain coming down on him, and he's just emitting this super evil guy laughter. And you're like, what? Oh, maybe Barney. Is Barney alive? Like, oh, what's going on?
Was arrogance continues.
You think I'd allow my electrical suit to be vulnerable to water? That I'm not insulated, grounded, protected?
This man is so full of himself. Like, even he's been stabbed. He's been punched. They're coming back against all odds, and he still is operating like nothing can touch him. He's good. He's not going to be good.
Oh, no. And it is a neat little nugget about him, though. He says, I built the Western American power grid before the war. I lit up half the country. You're only one man. And that is also mentioned in his bio page. So the pacing continues. The heartbeat. This is the page that made you go, when this happened, right? Because so you've got Nate, he's going to knock the lock off of Barney's cage with the hilt of his sword. And then he says, Barney. And we don't hear anything yet, but we do see an ear. And what's the ear doing?
There twitches, and then we see the eye.
The green eye.
The eye is open. The eye is showing life. We feel good about it. We know that Barney has persisted.
Yeah, it's just like you saw that moment, and that's when the theater would be like, yes!
And while this is happening, again, Mr. Full of himself is like, it's usually over quick. It's almost painless. And I he's like playing with his food.
And the irony of it is, it's because he takes those extra couple of seconds. It gives Barney enough time to get over and attack him. And he does get the zapped, but then it's like he persists and he jumps at him again. But
what happened there is Barney comes out, bumps into him, like kind of, Arr! And he zaps him. And then the electrician's, I'm gonna kill you, don't you understand? And before he can even say anything, Barney does bite one of his arms and disables one of the electric thingies. But when that happens, it causes an explosion.
Isn't it funny, if you recall, how they're in like the hot dog factory with the goofy type of hot dogs that would pop when you bite? Well, right behind the electrician's shoulder, there's that little devil dog character, and it says they pop when you bite. And in that panel, that's the same panel where Barney's biting him and he pops. It's just funny to me. Like I feel like that's kind of a Ghost Machine thing.
This is when I wasn't sure if Barney was okay again.
Oh, you thought then he might be dead.
My emotions were being toyed with because we get that big explosion. And you just see Barney, and I mean, that tongue is could be dead.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
because what she's saying, Ghost Machine fans, is she bites, he pops. That's a whole panel at the top of the page. It's like Barney yipping at an explosion. And then we just see him kind of slump to the ground. We don't know his status. But then I loved this. It reminded me of like Terminator.
Oh, I loved it. Okay, so you see that they have both fallen. The electrician, again, we're in a sausage factory. So the electrician has fallen into something. You see Geiger look up, concerned at first, and then you see moving and rotating equipment, grinder speed, caution. And I promise you, I was like, oh no, I know what's gonna happen. Just from that panel. My boot. Finally, this man is getting knocked off of his high horse. And he turns it on.
And he gets ground up like a sausage. It is really neat to see his facial expression as it happens. And to me, the fact that ultimately we see that those 3 facial expressions from the electrician as he's going through this pain. Then it's just an exterior shot of the plant with red interior lighting and him screaming.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's more effective than if they drew some really gruesome whatever.
Completely agree.
You know, it's very tasteful and very smart and very cool.
And you can tell Tariq is mad. You said you like pain. Tell me it hurts.
Yeah, and he's like, nope, I won't tell you. Nah. And that's it.
Yeah.
And now we are not sure. You know, and this is one of those situations where this whole page, if you're reading it the physical and you don't do panel to panel, you can see, okay, he licks him at the bottom. He's alive. But if you do panel to panel here, I do both. I buy the physical copy, I buy the digital copy. I'm 100% on board with everything. But if you do panel to panel in this case, you don't know that he is alive until you get to the 5th panel on the page where Barney licks him. Those first 4 panels, he might be dead still. That's pretty cool. But either way, he's alive! All is well. It's not like we have to tell our 8-year-old he can't wear the t-shirt anymore.
Oh, I'd be so upset. He already stole that from me. You turn the next page and we get this big splash page. And it's just, he's crying. I got you, boy. Oh, our dog.
That's awesome. And so now
I love it.
What's neat is it puts a bow on this and we breathe a sigh of relief. And then our last 2 pages open up a whole new chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes us really excited. This is so much of what we've been waiting for, right? Now, I want to point out the first thing is that it does say this is in South Virginia, not Washington, D.C., and it says the new White House.
Yes, I felt like that was super interesting as well because the new White House, I'm very, very intrigued.
So this is important because we're going to dive into this a little bit here. And what we're seeing is a military person who's reporting to someone they're addressing as President Griffin. They're letting him know they lost contact with the electrician. And then this President Griffin person says, did someone else outbid our bounty? The Queen's pockets are deeper than most realize. I think he's referring to the Queen of Camelot in Las Vegas because we know these people have been talking. And I absolutely love this.
I have a quick question, though. On this panel, where they're going back and forth about the bounty and whatnot, that teeny tiny little Junkyard Joe, is that like a pop figure?
See, it's funny. You didn't think that's what I was just about to say. When I said, love this Funko Pop Junkyard Joe that's on his desk.
It's adorable.
Yeah, it's clearly.
I need it. And I love this because, again, we're in the, quote, new White House. These men are talking murder. There's bounties. There's several, other parties involved. It's very mobster-esque.
Yeah.
Very
evil.
Yeah. And you just get the cutest Junkyard Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Love it. That's a phone screen background.
Sure. Yeah. That bad boy's been getting screenshotted and reposted on the interwebs a good bit. They do say that there's other people hunting the glowing man, because they have this bounty out. This president guy's like, you know what? Those others are going to fail, just like the robot did when the vice president sent them. That's what he's referring to. No one knows the true extent of Tariq Geiger's power like I do, let alone his will to survive. So remember, he's somebody that knows Tariq. And then he's like, fuel up Air Force One, take me west. I'll confront the glowing man myself. So he's somebody that knows Tariq, has a vendetta with Tariq. He's covered in bandages. What does his aesthetic remind you of? Any fictional character?
His aesthetic reminds me of somebody who accidentally went invisible and needs to have bandages. So, I mean this sincerely. I don't know if this is in a comic. It just looks like he's invisible underneath and they put the bandages on so they can see his form.
Typically, the Invisible Man looks that way. There's a character in the Doom Patrol that looks that way for a different reason. There's a movie back when we were younger called Dark Man that did that as well. Although I don't think that I think there was some flesh under him. He was just trying to hide it or something. So there's somebody else in the room with him. Who is that?
The custodian.
The custodian from Junkyard Joe, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we do know this is 25 years or more since then, and that when the custodian was unmasked in Junkyard Joe, he looked rather elderly.
Yes.
So either he's, I would assume, 90s or over 100. Either way, we do know it is the same custodian, because the custodian, when Griffin is like, go get me the plane, he's like, but President Griffin, Unit Beta, and he's trying to say, like, that's a priority. And Griffin tells him, recovering Junkyard Joe can wait. That robot is your obsession, custodian, not mine. Obviously, Tariq is his obsession for whatever reason. We've got a couple of significant things here. There's a reason that the custodian is still in play. We don't necessarily know what it is, but that's interesting to see, especially in this time period. We know there's a South Virginia. We know there's another White House, so there possibly are multiple White Houses, opposing forces, something like that. And we know that President Griffin looks like he might be invisible or perhaps even ghostly.
Are you taking my thing? My thing where, hold on, where's the timeline? No, there it is. Okay, so as we discussed, nothing has came out yet about First Ghost, right?
Yeah, the bio for President Sarah Nash did come out in Ghost Machine #1. And it does say that when she becomes president after a successful space mission back in a different era than this, that First Ghost is who she encounters when she's in the White House. It says in the bio, First Ghost is coming. It also says her first appearance is First Ghost #1. So we do know that her part in that tale takes place in a different era than this. It takes place prior to the Unknown War starting, because she's elected president.
Well, you know, I am a fan of my theory of time travel. What if this guy is in First Ghost? And that's why, I mean, we discussed this already. That's why he's all bandaged up, because he has to show a
corporeal form, yeah.
Corporeal form. I mean, I could be wrong. It's nice to speculate, though, right? It's exciting to not know. I do think it's funny that he says Junkyard Joe is not his obsession, and he's got a little pop figure on his own desk.
So you are joining the cadre of folks online who are suggesting that this is a possibility. And I'm going to devil's advocate a little bit. I think it is a possibility, sure. I mean, he is literally somebody that has to have bandages on his face to be visible, and he's sitting in an Oval Office. So those things tie with, you know, the presidency and a ghost or whatever. Almost every ghost in fiction I have ever seen is unable to wear clothes or bandages because they're non-corporeal. President Griffin also, if you happen to look it up, here, actually, we're going to segue slightly because our listener mail is about this question. Because Mark at Legion of Comics, who we mentioned before, was conversing with me about this. He asked me if I thought that he was going to be First Ghost too. And I said I wasn't really sure. You know, he did seem like the Invisible Man. If you look up the Invisible Man from H.G. Wells' novel, his name is actually Jack Griffin. So this is a reference to that character one way or another. Mm-hmm. So if this is First Ghost, that means that First Ghost is most likely going to tell you a tale of someone who is invisible. And that would also mean that he has to come into play prior to the Unknown War, because if my understanding of Sarah Nash's biography is correct, she becomes the president prior to the Unknown War.
It says present day. So First Ghost happens 25 years before Geiger.
Whatever happens with Sarah Nash, who becomes the president after like a mysterious space travel thing, she discovers First Ghost in the White House when she becomes the president. So it is somehow connected to the presidency, or it could be this guy. I just think that knowing that there's a build up to a whole, I believe this is its own series that's coming out. It would be odd to me for them to be like, oh yeah, the First Ghost guy, he's the guy that's also named after the Invisible Man, also in this other thing, and it just would surprise me.
Well, we'll see.
We will. And
when does it come out?
Oh, I don't think that's another question a lot of people have been asking me, and because I think we've got dates for Rockefellers, Hyde Street, and Hornsby and Halo now, and we're very excited about all of those. And we know that First Ghost is next, but I don't believe we have a set date on it yet, for sure. You know, I don't think I'm right. I don't know what happens. I just know when he does appear, right? Based on that bio that we got. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. There's a lot of people that actually think you're super right. But as soon as Mark from Legion of Comics, and thanks again, Mark, for all your support, that awesome ash can. As soon as he pointed that out, I was like, oh, yeah, that's an Invisible Man reference. It's a direct reference to another literary character, which I'm cool with. I dig that. You know, for all intents and purposes, it would be hilarious to me if this guy did somehow actually turn invisible, but because of the real life acknowledgement within the universe of the Invisible Man, he named himself that. I would be fine with that too. That would be hilarious. I feel like whatever First Ghost is more supernatural than the guy I see on this page. That's all.
It'll be a fun reveal regardless. And, like, how exciting that we can't wait for issue number 6.
Oh, absolutely, because it's like, you know, we talked about the pace of Geiger versus the other books being rather different, like the journey of Nate and Tariq, and it is just perfect, because I feel like now we're going to get a new tone, we're going to get a new angle that we get out of this. And the cover for the next one is really neat, because my buddy Tanner, remember Tanner from Instagram, and we gave him a shout out that one time? He owns the original art of this Geiger number 6, which is Barney's 2 heads, and in the background you see Tariq and Nate walking along the ledge.
It's a very pretty color.
This is the call of the wild. It's very much like, yay, Barney lived!
Yes. Yes. Now the search for books continues.
Yeah, but you're right. I'm so excited to see, like, I really want to know now what is the deal with this President Griffin guy and what is his connection to Geiger, because like he says, he's the one.
Great job of concluding what we were nervous about and then propelling us into, like, all right, cool, what's going on in Geiger number 6?
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent job.
Fantastic to hear all about it. Snoggle, did you have anything else to add to this fine episode of ours?
I am very excited for Wednesday when I'm going to read Redcoat number 5.
That's a cool one with the sharks on the cover, right?
Yes. I know you and me and our favorite Canadian are very excited about it, so.
Yes, we are.
Whoop whoop.
Glad you brought that up. All right, well, if you want to check out the rest of our content, make sure to steer on over to www.ghostmachinefans.com. You will find that the wiki has recently been renovated with many new characters, issues, events, locations, and artifacts from the world of Ghost Machine on it. And we have had a few new people start contributing, so thanks so much to everybody who's doing that. Also, we revamped the forums. There's some new spoiler central sections to them for all of us who want to get together and talk about these books, our theories about these books, and what happened in these books. That's a wrap for us. So thanks so much for joining us tonight on the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast.